Hello, everyone. Today we're privileged to host a class and Q&A session with an esteemed Hasidic scholar and principal of Machon Lehadus, Rabbi Majeski. Welcome. My name is Esther Carbonera, and I'm a proud Machon alumna. The topic of today's class is Simcha in these turbulent times. Many of us have been grappling with the question, with the world facing so many challenges, how can we be besimcha? We have turned to Rabbi Majeski for guidance. This class is going to be structured in such a way. First 30 minutes, we're going to have a class, followed by 30 minutes of questions and answers. And I'm more than happy to present your questions to Rabbi Majeski. Please send them to 646-701-3762. As we gather here, we're in the midst of our annual fundraising campaign, aiming to raise $360,000 in 3 days. Join us in reaching this goal by donating through the link that you see on the screen or by the promo code. Right now, we're all going to get a taste of learning in Machon Lehadus and being in Rabbi Majeski class. But before that, let's hear from our students about their experiences at Machon.
Something drew me to Crown Heights, the life of it I've never known.
Then I was like, whoa, what is this? What is a soul? What is an neshama? Like, what am I feeling?
It is super inspiring to see girls from all these different backgrounds just come together, have the same common goal.
When the Rebbe visited the dormitory, he turned to the dorm mother and he said to her, "Thank you for raising my daughters."
I grew up in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I grew up going to Reform Synagogue. First, I came to Machon when I was doing a week. Just 1 week is enough to make you learn so much and to take on like a new level in your Yiddishkeit. In my second semester here, it's nice to see that growth making its foundation in my life.
I grew up in Houston, Texas, to a very warm family. We did celebrate, other holidays than Hanukkah. Machon Lehadus has impacted me in such amazing ways through the connection and through the friendships and family that you really build here. It really just felt like the right place to be.
I've only been here for 2 months, and so far I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot from school, how to live in my life outside of school and in the dorm, to really know what Judaism is as Jewish women, and I think it's beautiful and it's teaching me a lot.
I grew up modern-Orthodox, so although I have a Jewish background, a lot of things like Hasidus, I'm very beginner, so I really like the diversity of classes and being able to be on different levels and learn at my pace.
You can choose any topic that you're interested in and you're matched with a partner to learn with you, that topic of your choice.
Being connected to the staff in more ways than just the classroom, like being able to come to their Shabbos table and eat by their meals and be involved in their families. It makes you really feel like you're a part of the community. All of the friendships here that you make living in the dorm, they really become like your sisters.
From Moldova. I was in Machon Lehadus around 7 years ago. Speaking for a lot of my friends, which are also from across the globe, you're in such a sensitive place. The teachers were just 150% there. To me, they're like my second family to this day.
When the students finish the school, they walk away with life skills. Besides learning just about Judaism, they're also learning about interpersonal relationships, what a home is supposed to be like, what a marriage is supposed to be like. It's all encompassing. It affects everything in their life.
I remember my first week here, I was so blown away by the teachers and how much they knew. You can see everyone's very real. They're living what they're teaching. And I really found that unique about this place of having teachers that are always around, always available to meet with us and checking in about what's going on in our lives.
These are not just educators that have a job and work their hours. They're passionate about what they do. They care about the students personally.
I'm a shliach at Brooklyn College. Any of our girls who spent any time at Machon Lehadus has always returned with absolute life-changing experiences, lifelong friends, and incredible mentors. As a shlicha, knowing that we have a place to send our girls to, we know they're in good hands, well taken care of, really is the greatest gift.
We'll be discussing the subject of Simcha in these turbulent times. But first, of course, it's understood it's a very broad subject, a lot of details to the subject. a lot of questions. It's also an emotionally charged subject, but we'll try to cover at least some of the basic points. First of all, to make it clear, that where does it come from? What's the source that a person is supposed to be b'simcha? And of course, the only source is whatever is written in Torah. So in Torah it says, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, that we should be serving Hashem with simcha. But serving Hashem is not only when we're davening, not only when we're learning Torah, and it's not only when we're performing mitzvahs. Serving Hashem is something which is constant. As we know, it says, Kol masecha l'shem shamayim, v'chol derchecha de'eyu, which means we serve Hashem with everything that we do. When we're eating, when we are going to work, when we're spending time with friends, in everything we do, this is a way of doing it that it's a part of serving Hashem. So if you're supposed to serve Hashem b'simcha, obviously it means we should always be b'simcha. People ask, how could you always be b'simcha? How could a person constantly be b'simcha? And I think that question comes from a little bit of a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding that being b'simcha means to be dancing and singing and clapping your hands, but that's not necessarily what we're referring to. That's in exceptional situations. Being b'simcha means a feeling that a person has on a constant basis, where they're feeling positive, they're feeling upbeat, calm, serene, motivated, and that's what it means to be b'simcha. And that's something which the Torah expects us to be that way all the time. The question is, how? When everything is going well and everything is perfect, exactly the way I want, what I want, when I want, of course, it's easy to be b'simcha. But how is it in other situations? So the important thing is to understand that being b'simcha is not only because it's a healthier state of mind. And when a person is b'simcha, they can accomplish much more. But as we just said, it's a spiritual thing. It's a way of serving Hashem. Being b'simcha is an expression of true emunah and true bitochen in Hashem. Trust in Hashem and faith in Hashem. To explain, there are basically two things that this is the source of a person feeling the opposite of simcha. Either something that happened in the past, something that happened, which is painful and it hurts, and that causes a person to be sad, or it's worries and anxiety about the future, what's going to happen. You see something is on the way, something unpleasant or something painful, and you're worried about that. In both situations, what is the Torah's perspective on how we should look at it from a Torah perspective? And that's the basis for the simcha. As we said before, that being b'simcha is an expression of true faith in Hashem, which means if I believe not only did Hashem create the world, and not only is Hashem leading the world in general, but every single detail that happens to every single person, all this is being orchestrated by Hashem himself. And therefore, whatever happened to me, if it happened in the past, if it happened, that means that Hashem had to be behind it. And he had to be the one to allow it to happen. And if Hashem allowed it to happen, and Hashem, as we know, is the epitome of goodness and kindness, so I know that whatever happened has a purpose, and there's a reason for it, and ultimately that reason is positive, is a good reason. And therefore, if I look back, and I look the way it appears on the surface, it's something painful, but if I look into it, I say, well, this comes from Hashem, and certainly the purpose is something positive. Therefore, I look at it from a different perspective. I see it in a more positive way. In the language of the Gemara, Kol ma David Rachmana l'tavu da'ovid. Everything Hashem does is for the good. Or a different quote, Gam zu l'teva. Whatever happens is also for the good. So there are some times that it's easy to relate to that because what happened is not so painful. Sometimes Hashem helps us that in a short period of time we see the good that came out of it. Recently, there are a lot of stories that are circulating about the miracles that are happening in Gaza. Incredible stories. And in some of these stories, you see exactly that. Something happened. Soldiers thought that this is going to be some sort of disaster. Turned out to be a tremendous blessing. A lot of these stories are well known, but I'll just give one of the example of one thing that someone told this following story, that he's a commander in the army, and he came into the room to meet with the other commanders, have a meeting about what the next move is going to be, and he sees that everybody, their faces are pale, and they look like something terrible happened. When he asked them what's going on, they said that there are 3 tanks. Each tank has in it 12 soldiers, and they saw the picture through a drone that unfortunately all the tanks were hit and blew up. That means 36 soldiers, and they were just devastated about the fact itself. What are they going to tell the families? How does such a thing happen in one day? 36 soldiers. And as they're talking, a phone call comes in from one of the soldiers that was in the tank. And of course he says to them, "How are you talking to me? What happened?" And he said that something in the tank was malfunctioning and they had to get out of the tank because otherwise they're just sitting there with a tank that can't move. So all 12 soldiers went out of the tank. There was another tank behind them that saw them getting out of the tank. They didn't know why, but they figured if they're getting out of the tank, there must be something wrong with this area. So they also went out of the tank. And the third tank said, if these 2 guys are getting out of the tank, we should also get out. Something must be going on. And when they came to safety, a moment later, all 3 tanks were hit and went up in flames. So Baruch Hashem, they're all alive. But what they thought a moment before, that the fact that it's malfunctioning could lead to disaster, was actually a big bracha. But it was in disguise. But again, there are sometimes things that happen that are so difficult to make any sense of it, and they're so difficult emotionally. What can a person say to himself? Like, why is Hashem making this happen? And to say that this is going to lead to the good, but it's so painful, we can't see that. So the answer is, it's true we can't understand, and we can't ask why, simply because Hashem is infinite, and His intellect is infinite, and we can't expect that we who are finite should be able to comprehend and understand Hashem's plan, who is infinite, and His wisdom is infinite. In other words, we can't understand why Hashem does what He does, but what we could understand is the fact that we can't expect ourselves to understand. Try to imagine an infant who's 6 months old, and the mother is either bathing the child or feeding the child or doing other things, caring for the child, and this infant is screaming and kicking and very upset. There's no way in the world, no matter how you speak and how you explain and what words you use, there's no way in the world that a 6-month-old baby can be explained that what the mother is doing is for their benefit. But a mother and a baby are both finite. And in a few years, 20 years from now, this infant will be just as smart as the mother. The distance between us and Hashem is infinite. So how much more so that we can't expect that with our finite brain, we should understand Hashem's infinite wisdom. Just when you look at the creation itself, the wisdom in creation, as many people have pointed out, there are people who were atheists their whole life. And yet, when the DNA, for example, was discovered, They came to the conclusion there has to be a creator. There has to be an intellectual being that put all this together. There's no way this could have happened by itself. So if we look into the wisdom of one cell, the wisdom in the DNA, we see that this is something which is beyond human comprehension. And therefore, we can say to ourselves, I can't understand why, but I could understand, and I should understand, that I can't understand Hashem. Nevertheless, we're human, and things are painful. So how can a person possibly be with Simcha? And the answer to that is the way it's explained specifically in Chassidus, is that most people think that I can control speech, I can control action, but I can't control my thoughts. The truth is we can. And in fact, the thoughts, the mind, is considered the key to the heart. Which means when a person feels pain, of course it's because something happened, but the reason why they feel the pain is because of the mind, the brain is tuned in to that pain. In fact, there's a pasuk that says, Yosef das, Yosef machiv. I guess we would translate that in English. It would sound like the more brains, the more pains. Which means not only if a person is, the smarter a person is, the more he will feel pain because he understands things better, but it's also if I'm tuned in, and if a person would distract himself and not be focused on the things that are painful, they would not feel the pain in their heart. I had a personal story with a child that once fell. He was an 8-year-old at the time, and he fell in such a way that he hit his chin on a counter, and his tongue happened to be between his teeth when his chin hit the counter. And the teeth went right through his tongue. Rushed him to the hospital, he had a hole in his tongue, and the doctor said they have to do stitches. I won't go into the details how you do stitches on the tongue of an 8-year-old, but of course he was crying, and he loved stories, so I started to tell him a story. And while he's listening, he stopped crying. They noticed that he's not crying, so they started doing the stitches. They did 13 stitches on his tongue, and he was quiet the whole time. Why? Because he was totally distracted. He was distracted by the story, wasn't thinking about what's going on, and therefore he didn't feel the pain. This is physical pain. How much more so when we talk about emotional pain, that the fact that we feel that pain is because we're focusing on it and we're thinking about it. If we would be able to train ourselves, and we could, to get ourselves not to be focused on the things that are painful, then it would not cause that pain, and we'd be able to accomplish and do the things we need to do. So this is when we talk about the past. When we talk about the future, in Torah, there's one of the basic principles in Torah is that a Jew should have bitachon. Bitachon means confidence and trust in Hashem. The pasuk, Baruch HaGever, Asher Yiftach B'Hashem, V'Yeh Hashem Yiftachei. Blessed is the person that has trust in Hashem. The question is, what does it mean? How can I be sure that Hashem is going to help me, whatever the situation is? Maybe I don't deserve it. After all, one of the principles in Judaism is that Hashem runs this world with a system of reward and punishment. So if you deserve, you get what you deserve. If chas v'shalom, things are done the wrong way, then there's the opposite of reward. So how could a person be sure that what they're asking for, what they're hoping for is going to be, even though Hashem is good, and Hashem is kind, and Hashem is compassionate, but Hashem does run the world with a system of reward and punishment. And the answer is that that's what bitachon means, that Hashem is basically saying to us that if you have trust in me, and you trust that I will help you, in the merit of that trust in itself, I will give you the bracha that you are waiting for. To illustrate this with a story, And this has become a very famous quote by the Rebbe and by all Chassidim, and I think by now in the entire world. It's an expression in Yiddish, trach gut wird sein gut, which means think positive and it'll be positive. And the story is about a chassid whose son was very sick and came to a point where the doctors told him that they believe he only has a few hours to live. And when he heard this, he broke down crying. And there was an older chassid that happened to walk by, and he asked him what happened. When he told him what the doctor said, so he said, so why don't you quickly go to the city of Lubavitch, to the Rebbe, at that time was the Tzemach Tzedek, and ask him for a bracha. And he said, the doctor said he only has a few hours. It takes a few hours to get there. What's the point? And the chassid insisted that he go. He got him a friend to travel with him, and immediately he went to Lubavitch. When he came to the Rebbe's room, he handed the Rebbe the note for his request of his child that's sick. And as he gave the Rebbe the note, a thought passed his mind. I'm asking for a bracha, but who knows if it's even relevant anymore. Maybe it's, God forbid, all over. And as the thought passed his mind, he broke down crying again right in front of the Rebbe. And the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, why are you crying? And he said these words, trach gut wird sein gut. Think positive and it'll be positive. And later when he came home, he found out that things turned around. In fact, when he was in the Rebbe's room and he changed the way he was thinking, that's when all this happened. And for the rest of his life, he knew always to do that when there was any kind of a crisis. And this is something which the Rebbe always encourages us, based on the teachings of the Chovos HaLevavos, duties of the heart, where he explains that bitachon doesn't just mean I'm calm, I have peace of mind, because I trust whatever Hashem will do is good. It's much deeper than that. It's because I trust that Hashem will give me the bracha that I'm waiting for, and even though I can't be sure that I deserve, but this is something different. It's as if Hashem is saying there's two ways that I deal with people. One is reward and punishment, and then there's another path. And that is, if you have bitachon, if you trust in me, then in that merit alone, whether you do deserve or don't deserve, you will get that bracha. And this is also found in a pasuk in Tilim, Kapitel Lamed Beis, pasuk Yud, where it says, "V'abateich b'Hashem, he who trusts in Hashem, chesed yisebevenu." Hashem's kindness will encompass him. The mere fact that he has that trust. That's what bitachon is all about. Another point about bitachon is, it's based on a pasuk where it says, Da malamayla mimoch. The simple meaning is, always remember that Hashem is above you and He's watching you. But there's a Hasidic interpretation. Sometimes it's mentioned in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, sometimes in the name of Ezricha Magid, and sometimes in the name of the Alter Rebbe. And that is, Da, you should know, Malamayla, what goes on above, up there in heaven, Mimoch comes from you. Which means, it's based also on the words of the Zohar. The Zohar says that the way I think and the way I feel in my head, there'll be a reflection of that in heaven. And just like water reflects the face of a person, and if I'm smiling, I'm going to see a smiling face in the water, or the opposite, I'll see the opposite in the water. When a person in his head thinks positive and has a picture in his head of things working out and the bracha coming and everyone being happy and excited, he creates that situation in Shemayim. And from there, it evolves down here. So in other words, the mere fact that I'm thinking good, I'm creating that good bracha in the heavens. And from there, it's so much more probable that it would evolve from heaven down to earth. And it would evolve into the bracha that I'm waiting for. In fact, there's another pasuk in Tilim where it says, Hashem tzilcha ayad yeminecha, which means Hashem is your shade. It means that Hashem protects you. Just like a shade protects us from the hot sun, shade can protect us from the rain, Hashem protects us. The Baal Shem Tov says there's another meaning to those words, a deeper meaning. Tzeil can also mean a shadow. Hashem is my shadow. Just like the shadow copies whatever the person's doing, that's how Hashem follows the direction that we're moving in that direction. So if I'm picturing in my mind a certain bracha, that bracha is what happens in the heavenly realm. And from there it comes down here. In fact, many people have had the merit that when they wrote to the Rebbe about a certain crisis, the Rebbe told them, even before the crisis was over, the Rebbe said to them, make a kiddush, make a sudas haidah, make a special meal of thanksgiving to Hashem. And to them it was shocking. They're all worried about what's going to happen. By making the meal, I'm declaring openly my trust in Hashem that things will be good, and I'm already rejoicing now. This is similar to what happened in Mitzrayim, where it says that Miriam and the women, when they went out of Egypt, they took musical instruments out with them. Why? They were so confident, they were so sure that they're going to be seeing and witnessing incredible miracles, they're already getting ready to play the instruments and to rejoice. And that's what the Rebbe told these people. If you're going to be in that state of mind, then the bracha will come to you. And that's another point in why thinking positive brings the bracha from the Eibishter in a positive way. That's in general. Specifically now, as we started to talk, Simcha in these turbulent times, everyone understands what we're referring to. Besides being turbulent times in general, but right now the whole world is focused on Eretz Yisrael, focused on the tragic events that happened, focused on the war that's going on, and also many people are very worried and filled with anxiety. What's going to be? What's going to be in Israel? What's going to be in the rest of the world? So much anti-Semitism, we've never saw anything like it. So in general, the same principle applies. Trach gut, wird sein gut. But here, there's an additional point. The Rebbe actually spoke to us and told us and prepared us how we should be approaching this time. What I'm referring to is in the years 1990, 1991, and in 1992, when the Persian crisis started, the crisis in the Persian Gulf, the Rebbe then quoted a famous medrash, Yalkut Shimoni, and the medrash says that there'll be things going on with all the nations, and the whole world will be panicking, and the Yidden will be panicking, and Hashem will send a message through Mashiach, and the message will be, Bonai al tisyora, my children, do not be afraid. Higiyaz mangul aschem. The time of your redemption has arrived. Which means whatever you see happening, don't worry that the outcome, God forbid, will be who knows what. But whatever is happening is part of a process which is leading up to Geula. And that was then, and the same thing with everything that's going on now. The Rebbe told us we're in a special time. We're already in the process of redemption unfolding. So certainly we don't have to be afraid, no fear, no anxiety, worried who knows how the anti-Semitism is going to spread. And you hear all sorts of people writing articles and predicting, God forbid, who knows what. We have to have our firm bitachon in the Rebbe's words and spread it as much as we can to the rest of the world. And in fact, in addition to that, in 1967, the Rebbe also spoke about the situation going on in Israel with that war. And the Rebbe said that there's a pasuk where it talks about Mashiach coming and describes that when Mashiach comes, there'll be a big shofar that is blown. And there are a lot of details to this, but the thrust of it is that before Mashiach comes, we're going to see wars. We're going to see how people who are evil will receive their just punishment. And there's going to be things happening which is going to shake up the whole world. And then we're also going to see that Jews around the world, Jews who are far away, not only far away geographically speaking, far away spiritually, and very distant from Yiddishkeit, they will be shook up and they will sort of open up and have a desire to come closer to Hashem. And the Rebbe said that World War I and World War II, That was mainly the first part of the prophecy, where we saw the wars and the suffering and what we call Chevli Mashiach, the birth pangs of Mashiach. What happened then in 1967, and clearly this is what's happening now, is we see the second part of the prophecy, something which is a global sort of explosion in a spiritual way, in a positive way, that is unprecedented, where Yidden from all over are opening up and wanting to reconnect to Yiddishkeit. Not just Jews who didn't identify with Yiddishkeit, even Jews who were in opposition to Yiddishkeit. Again, these are things that are circulating and everybody probably heard about it or saw it, but to give an example of a certain individual who's very famous in Israel, a journalist, and he writes about himself how he changed after this incident that happened October 7th. And he writes that I was a person that I grew up in a home where there was a contempt for Judaism. I myself had nothing to do with it. In fact, the two words that I hated the most were the two words, I'm Jewish. And he says when he would travel and speak and ask people would ask him if he's Jewish, his answer would be, I'm Israeli. There's nothing really Jewish about me. It's not part of my ID at all. This person writes that now he sees that he can't escape it. Something happened. And what happened was that now he feels proud to be a Jew. He's actually ashamed of all this time before that he said the things that he said. And he wants to identify with Yiddishkeit as much as possible. In fact, he writes that he didn't know exactly what to do. He wanted to do something spiritual for the soldiers. He gathered his family together. The only thing he knew was to make the blessings for the Hanukkah candles. So he made the blessings for the Hanukkah candles in that time. And basically, this is what we see. In the language of Hasidus, it means the Nekudas Hayadus, the Pintaliyah, the essence of the soul is coming out. And that's the prophecy that's going to happen before Mashiach comes. So therefore, certainly, in this situation, we shouldn't be filled with anxiety about the future, worry about the future. On the contrary, this should only strengthen our emunah in Mashiach and show us how Mashiach's coming is imminent, and do everything that we can in a way of Simcha to bring about that everybody in the world should recognize that we're coming closer to Mashiach, and everybody in the world should recognize the tremendous miracles that are happening now, and soon we'll be witnessing greater miracles, the miracles that we're waiting for, the total victory of Am Yisrael, and the whole world should unite all together in serving Hashem. So in conclusion, in a situation where now it's certainly easier to have that confidence about the future, having this bracha and this sort of prophecy, haftacha that the Rebbe gave us. I'd like to draw your attention, everybody, as we're in the middle of our fundraiser, please go to the website. We're very excited to announce that Baruch Hashem, we've reached 50% of our goal, and hopefully we'll ask all of you that you'll all help us reach 75% of our goal tonight, and we'll be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish, to be able to give the utmost education for young Jewish women in our school, Machon Liyadus. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Rabbi Majeski, for sharing your profound insights on finding Simcha and staying with Simcha in these challenging times. And how should we react to today's news? Thank you, everyone, for supporting Jewish learning through your donations, and please keep them coming. Help us reach 75% of our goal tonight. I've received a lot of fascinating questions, and I am so excited to ask them. And the first one is here. Many times, think good and it will be good didn't work out. how do I continue? Or why should I continue and keep believing into it?
Generally speaking, this is what it says in Torah, that being positive and having the tochen brings the bracha. But in a sense, it's no different than other things. For example, we know that davening brings Hashem's bracha. Giving tzedakah brings Hashem's bracha. Saying Tillim brings Hashem's bracha. If a person would say, I said Tillim, I davened, I gave tzedakah, or did more things, and I didn't see this blessing that I'm waiting for come about. A Jew who is committed to Torah mitzvahs won't draw the conclusion that therefore these things don't work. It says in the Torah that this is the way to get Hashem's bracha. And if it didn't, that means there was an exceptional situation for one reason or other, a decree that's different, and therefore it didn't help. So the same here, that generally speaking, the way to get Hashem's bracha is by having confidence and bitachon, thinking positive. If chas v'shalom doesn't happen, and I'm 100% sure that this person or these other people thought positive and they didn't see the bracha, that means that this was an exceptional situation.
Thank you so much. Okay, and next question. Where is the fine line between having bitachon and being avoidant/delusional?
I think maybe to rephrase that question, if I understood it correctly, is if a person would say, I have bitachon, that I'm going to have parnasa, and therefore I'm not going to bother going on an interview, getting a job, and doing all that hard work, which is uncomfortable, just have bitachon. So the answer is bitachon and doing what needs to be done are not a contradiction, they go hand in hand. Which means that Hashem set up the world in such a way that He wants us to do everything which would bring results, but to do it in the natural order. In fact, it says in Torah, Ein Simcha al Nes. We don't rely on miracles. We do things that need to be done. And nevertheless, when I do it, instead of being doubtful, having anxiety, I go with confidence that this will bring me the bracha that I need. So being delusional means not doing what needs to be done in the natural order, not going to a doctor or not going to a lawyer when you need. Or let's say now in Israel, we believe that the victory that's happening is from Hashem. It says in Tillim, and everyone says this, Eila v'rechav, be'ela v'asusim, the enemies come with horses, they come with chariots, and what do we come with? V'nachnu b'shem Hashem naskir, we come with the name of Hashem. But at the same time, we have an army, and we have to have the best army, and we have to have the best quality of technology and weapons, whatever we need. At the same time, we believe that we're trusting Hashem, not in our sort of strength. So therefore, we have to do what needs to be done, and at the same time, have bitachon on Hashem.
Wow, that's not easy. Thank you.
It's another sign that it's the right thing.
I hope whoever asked that question got an answer and starts doing what they have to do. How can we explain to not from Jews or Goyim who are wondering how we're celebrating weddings, bar mitzvahs, we're dancing and singing at this time? I'm sure they don't understand what's going on.
So first of all, the enemy wants exactly that. He wants to disrupt our life. He wants us to stop doing what we need to do. He wants us all to be depressed and all to be hopeless and in despair. So that's the last thing that we should be doing now. We have to go on with everything, with our learning, with our davening, with bar mitzvahs, with simchas, and to show them the opposite, that there's nothing in the world that's going to stop us from living the way we're supposed to be living. But again, as we said before, that being b'simcha actually brings Hashem's bracha. That's what makes things happen. And in fact, there's a phrase which I didn't mention before, Simcha peretz geder, which means joy breaks all barriers. What that means, in a simple sense, means that we see people, every person has their limitations. This I could do, this I can do, this is difficult for me to do. And yet, when a person is very happy, is very uplifted, and is in a good frame of mind, He'll be ready to do things that normally he was shy, he was intimidated, he didn't feel comfortable. At a wedding, you see people who are very happy, they suddenly become big speakers. You never saw this person speak before. He's always so quiet. They're so upbeat that all the barriers sort of just, they fall. And he's able to do things that normally you can't. So basically, the same is with Shamayim, with heaven. There are barriers, there are rules and regulations. This happens under these circumstances, that happens under different circumstances. There are certain rewards, there are certain punishments. But when there's a Simcha in Shamayim, those barriers also sort of fall. So when we have the Simcha down here, we create Simcha up there. And when there's Simcha up there, the barriers in the heavenly court also fall. And Hashem brings His bracha in spite of any sort of barriers that might be existing. So the opposite is true. By having a Simcha and having bar mitzvah, having a wedding and dancing and singing with bitachon, that brings the bracha.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for explaining it. Another question is, should I be continuing my regular activities, going shopping, having fun, buying things for myself, etc.?
So I think this is similar to the other question. And again, of course, with all this going on and with so many people suffering, unfortunately, people suffering because of the losses, people suffering because they lost their homes, people suffering because their family are hostages, I think we should be sensitive to that, and if we do feel their pain, what we said before was not to focus on the pain, but we should be feeling their pain and not act in a way which sort of is insensitive, as if everything is perfect and there aren't people that are going through tremendous suffering now. But on the other hand, we should go on with our lives. Those of us who live in a different country, not there, should do whatever we can and have in mind that the good things we do should help them. If I'll take a moment to explain that when the Rebbe said, for example, that putting on film helps the soldiers, putting on film, not just a soldier, anyone who puts on film. And the people asked the Rebbe, how would it help that a person in America puts on film for a soldier in Israel? How would it help a person in Australia, in Europe, putting on film should help a soldier in Israel? And the Rebbe's answer is, take for example, an injection. A doctor gives a person a medicine, injects the medicine in the arm. The actual problem is not in the arm, it's in the leg. But because it's one body, and the blood flows through the veins through the entire body, you put an injection in the arm, it'll help all the other organs in the body. We're all one, we're all connected. Whatever we do helps any Jew around the world. In fact, it says in Gemara that the reason why Hashem made it so that Jews are not all concentrated in one place, they're all in different places, for this reason.
Wow.
So if somebody in another country is having a hard time, the people in a free country could do what they need to do to help them. So for us to bring suffering on ourselves and not do what we could do would actually be doing a disfavor to them, not the opposite.
Wow. Thank you so much. And another question. I have so many interesting questions. I hope we can fit them all in.
Okay.
How do you reconcile? On the one hand, is like everything Hashem does is good. And on the other hand, we're davening that Hashem should change things for us with the way they are, for the better.
A good question. I think a lot of people have that question. Like if somebody's chas v'shalom not well, and you're saying everything Hashem does for the good, so why am I davening and begging Hashem to make them well if everything is for the good and Hashem knows what He's doing? But the answer is, I think, like everything else, there's many details, but I think one simple way of approaching it is if you're talking about the past or the future. If something already happened in the past, the fact that it happened, now I know for sure that Hashem was behind it, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. What should be my perspective? My perspective should be that Hashem is good, and Hashem did it for a purpose, and the fact that it happened is for a purpose which is good. So let's say, for example, a person has a cold, very uncomfortable, doesn't feel well. So I say, it's from Hashem. What should I do in the future? Should I do something to stop it or allow it to continue? So we look into the Torah, and the Torah says that I need to do everything I can to be healthy. I need to do everything I can that I'm not sick, that I'm well. So both physically and spiritually, we have to do everything we can that things should be good in a revealed way. And that's why we daven. In fact, Hashem is the one that wants us to daven. He's the one that gave us the commandment to daven. So that's about the future. When you talk about things that already happened, that's when I use the principle, everything that happened is for the good.
So the main difference is between the past and the future.
Correct.
Wow. Amazing. What is the difference between being besimcha all the year and Shabbos Yom Tov?
In other words, if you're supposed to be besimcha all the time, then what's the difference? Why is there a mitzvah to be besimcha? I think the difference is that when we began the talk before, I mentioned that a person can be singing and dancing and jumping up and down and laughing every second of the day. That's not what's required. Simcha all year long means being positive and being confident, being uplifted, upbeat, and being optimistic. That's simcha. The simcha that's required on Shabbos or Yom Tov means these are days to actually focus. I would put it this way: during the year we're doing other things. We're davening, we're learning, we're going to work. Whatever we do it in a simcha-dik way. But on the holidays, or let's say at a wedding, these are times that we're focusing on simcha. That's the focus. So therefore, it's a greater degree of simcha, and we're dancing and we're singing, and that's how we celebrate simcha on these special occasions.
I see. I hope you're getting answers to all your questions that you really wanted to ask. And you didn't have an opportunity to ask, but now Rabbi Majeski is here to explain us all these profound and deep concepts. Some say that feeling bad is actually an advantage. It will push you to do things that needs to be done. How would you explain that?
To a certain extent, that is true, which means if I'm not aware that there's something wrong, that there's a problem, then I'm not going to be motivated to correct the problem. That's true. I know a doctor once said that one of the gifts that Hashem gave us was pain. How could pain be a gift? Because if, God forbid, there's something wrong in the body and the person feels no pain, they're not alerted to do anything about it, and then, God forbid, it grows and grows beyond repair. The fact that there's pain makes me aware, I look into it, I take care of it, and I can heal it. So the same with anything else. If I don't feel the pain, then the pain does something. It makes me alert to do something about the situation. But that's only to make me aware, make me alert. But actually, to accomplish things, if I get into the pain and feel sad, like this question, the sadness will actually interfere with being proactive and doing the things that need to be done. To be able to accomplish things and change things, a person has to be full of energy, full of life, has to be hopeful, and has to have all these things that we said before. You have to be positive and optimistic. These are tools that motivate us to do things. If a person is sad, it actually interferes with doing what they need to do. It'll slow them down, and it'll do the opposite of what we want to accomplish.
But in the beginning, the feeling of sadness is actually good.
Right. Being aware that there's something here that needs to be corrected is a positive thing. But the focusing on it and then sort of making that into the main thing, that's something which is negative. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. During the 3 weeks, 3 weeks are 3 weeks that are set aside for mourning the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And basically it's a time where we don't make weddings, or we don't take haircuts, we don't buy new clothes. In the recent years, the Rebbe said we should be doing another thing. Not, God forbid, not to do those things, that's in the Shulchan Aruch. But our main focus should be learning about the Beis HaMikdash, strengthening our Amunah, which means there's something wrong, we're in Gullus. Do we focus on how bad Gullus is, or do we focus on what could we do to bring redemption, to bring Geula? And that means we should focus on the positive and how we can bring about, and be excited that soon we'll be able to have things change. But if a person focuses on the negative, it actually makes him sort of go back into themselves and not do the things that need to be done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think there is a question here that you have partially answered during your class. How should we react to news? Should we be checking them constantly? What do you recommend? How would we know what's going on without them?
So again, we're only human. We all want to know what's going on. But I think this might also be the way of determining whether it's positive or negative. If a person gets into the news and they're constantly looking at the news, which means a lot of this time could have been learning for the soldiers, giving tzedakah for the soldiers, saying Tehillim for the soldiers. Instead, hours go away looking at the news. So the question is, for my curiosity, this might be better. But if I want to help the soldiers, they'll get more out of my doing something in that time than just sitting and watching the news. So again, in moderation, to look at things, to see what's going on, to know what's going on, yes. But when it becomes an obsession and sort of takes away time from everything else, then it's counterproductive.
Understood. Thank you so much. And I think it's going to be the last question for today. Someone is referring to a Shmoi Sicha, where Moshe Rabbeinu got scared and failed at having a proper bitachon. How are we supposed to?
Before we go over there, I want to bring up another question, maybe also something I heard recently in a class, and I think a lot of people have that question. And that is when we say something like, everything Hashem does is for the good, and therefore whatever is happening now is leading to redemption. So people ask, so what are you telling me, that this is happening because of that reason? Hashem couldn't do it in another way? Why? How's that an explanation? That because Hashem wants to bring Mashiach, He brought these wars and all the things that come along with it. So the thing is, it's important to recognize what we're saying when we say that everything that's happening is leading up to Mashiach is not explaining why. What we're explaining is what. We're not saying why Hashem did it. We're explaining what is going on. That what's happening is, it's a process that's leading up to redemption, not a process that's leading up to, God forbid, chaos or destruction or other things that people try to imagine. You know, I'm just using this as an example, as imagine if for a woman who was very simple and never was educated, knows nothing about, she's expecting a baby, and then at a certain point, she's experiencing tremendous pain, and she's starting to panic. She doesn't know if she's having a heart attack, God forbid if she's having some other attack, and she's running to the emergency room, and the doctor smiles and says, oh, you're having a baby. So he's not telling her why Hashem made that you go through pain. He's telling her what? That what you're going through is leading up to a bracha, not leading up to the opposite. So when we say that what's happening is leading up to Mashiach, we're not answering why. We don't know the answer to that question. We just know what. That the process is leading up to redemption.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the Shmoi Sicha, I don't know if you...
So if people are not familiar, to get a little bit background, what that means, that the Rebbe brings down the famous Sicha. It's Sicha in Parsha Shmois. It's in Chelik Lamed Vav, the first Sicha. That is sort of the most powerful Sicha that explains the whole subject of Bitachon. And in that Sicha, the Rebbe brings down that there's an opinion that Moshe Rabbeinu, and the same with Yaakov, that they didn't have the proper bitachon. And that's why there's certain outcomes. So this is a subject that it's very hard to explain without having more background in Chassidus. But Chassidus explains in a number of places that when it says, maybe I'll give one example of the story of Aaron's children, Nadav and Avihu, that they passed away, not because they did something wrong, but because they had such love for Hashem that their soul expired. Mm-hmm. But isn't that against Torah? And explaining Chassidus that idea that it's against Torah began after this incident. Mm-hmm. When they did what they did, the situation was different. After this incident, that's when a new Avodah began, that you're not allowed to have love for Hashem to the degree that the neshama leaves the body. And the same with the Meraglim and other examples. So I guess this would be probably along the same lines if we say that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have that bitachon that we're expected to have. That means at that time it was a different Avodah, but that in itself is the source that teaches us now what the new Avodah is, that we should have total bitachon and total trust, and that trust will bring Hashem's bracha.
Thank you so much. And that was the last question for today. In closing, I would like to say A heartfelt thank you to Rabbi Majeski for illuminating the concept of Simcha through the lens of Hasidus and answering all of these complicated and really good questions. Thank you for sending them. To everyone here, your presence is invaluable. Thank you so much for donating, whoever already donated. Let's unite to help Machon Liadus achieve its goal. And I want to wish you a great evening and a good week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.